You've been operating under a fundamental misunderstanding about how reality works, and it's been costing you everything, not just opportunities or relationships or money, though those too, but something far more essential: your power, your actual capacity to shape what happens in your life. And the reason this misunderstanding has been so devastating is because it's invisible. You can't see it. It's woven into the very fabric of how you were taught to think about yourself and the world around you. It's in the language you use, the assumptions you make, the way you respond to circumstances. It's so fundamental that questioning it feels like questioning gravity. But here's what most people don't realize. The entire model you've been living from, the one that says reality is something solid and external that you have to navigate and adapt to, is backwards, completely, utterly backwards. And once you see this, once you really see it, everything changes, not metaphorically, literally. Because you're not the screen. You never were. You're the projector. From the moment you could form thoughts, you were taught to believe that reality is something that happens to you, a solid external screen upon which your life plays out. You wake up, and the world is already there, fixed, determined, independent of you. Your job, as you understood it, was to figure out how to survive in this predetermined landscape, how to get what you need, how to avoid what you don't want, how to make the best of the hand you've been dealt. This is screen consciousness, and it's the default setting for most human beings walking the planet right now. In screen consciousness, you are the receiver. Reality broadcasts signals at you, and your experience is simply what gets displayed. Good things happen, you're grateful. Bad things happen, you're devastated, but either way, you're not the source, you're just the suit or face where it all appears. And from this perspective, changing your reality requires enormous effort. You have to push against what's already there. You have to force circumstances to bend. You have to overcome obstacles, fight resistance, convince other people, manipulate variables. It's exhausting. And even when you succeed, there's always this underlying anxiety because you know that at any moment reality could shift in a way you didn't choose, and there's nothing you can fundamentally do about it. So you develop coping strategies, you try to control everything you can, you create backup plans, you brace for impact, you learn to expect disappointment so it doesn't hurt as much when it comes. You become really, really good at adapting to circumstances, and you call this maturity, wisdom, being realistic. But adaptation is what screens do. Screens don't create, they display. Screens don't determine, they reflect. And as long as you identify as the screen, you will always be at the mercy of whatever's being projected onto you. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because even while operating from screen consciousness, you've had moments, fleeting, undeniable moments where something impossible happened, where reality shifted in response to your inner state, not the other way around. Maybe you thought about someone you hadn't spoken to in years, and they called you that same day. Maybe you were in a terrible mood, and suddenly everyone around you became irritable and confrontational. Maybe you felt an inexplicable certainty that something was going to happen, and it did, exactly as you sensed it would. In those moments, you noticed something. A crack in the supposed solidity of external reality, a hint that maybe, just maybe, the relationship between your consciousness and the world isn't what you've been told. But then the moment passes. You dismiss it as coincidence, you explain it away, you go back to screen consciousness, because that's what everyone around you is operating from, and questioning it feels too dangerous, too destabilizing, too insane. Except it's not insane. It's physics. The double-slit experiment didn't just change quantum mechanics, it shattered the myth of objective reality. When particles were observed, they behaved like particles. When they weren't observed, they behaved like waves. The act of observation, consciousness, interacting with potential, collapsed the wave function and determined the outcome. This wasn't a quirk of subatomic behavior. This was a revelation about the fundamental nature of reality itself. Consciousness doesn't passively observe a pre-existing world. Consciousness participates in creating what appears. And here's the part that breaks the old model completely. The observer effect isn't limited to laboratory experiments with electrons. It's happening constantly, at every scale, in every moment of your life. Your consciousness, your attention, your emotional state, your beliefs, your expectations is collapsing infinite potential into specific, tangible experience. You are not witnessing reality. You are generating it. The moment you truly recognize that you are the projector, that reality is the output, not the input, the entire mechanism inverts. And this isn't just a nice reframe that makes you feel better. This is an operational shift that changes what's actually possible for you. Because when you identify as the screen, you believe the image comes from somewhere else. You're trying to change what's being projected onto you by manipulating the projection. You're in the movie, trying to rearrange the scene while the film keeps rolling. But when you recognize you're the projector, you understand that the image originates from within you, your internal state, your frequency, your coherence, your nervous system regulation is what's broadcasting outward. And what you experience as external reality is simply the hologram that results from that broadcast. This means you're not trying to change what's out there, you're adjusting what's in here. And when you adjust the source, the projection changes automatically. Let me show you something. Think about the last time you tried to manifest something, a relationship, money, an opportunity, whatever it was. What did you do? You probably visualized it, you affirmed it, you made a vision board or wrote it down repeatedly. You tried to feel it as if it already happened. You did all the techniques, and maybe it worked sometimes, or maybe it didn't work at all, or maybe it worked partially in weird, distorted ways that left you more confused than before. Here's why. Every single one of those techniques, when done from screen consciousness, reinforces the fundamental problem. Because they all presume that reality is separate from you and that you have to somehow convince it or force it or trick it into giving you what you want. The effort itself is the issue. Effort means resistance. Resistance means separation. Separation means you're still identifying as the screen, trying desperately to change the image by wishing really hard at it. But projectors don't wish. Projectors don't hope. Projectors don't try. Projectors simply output. And whatever they're outputting, that's what appears on the screen we call reality. So the question isn't how do you make reality bend to you? The question is, what are you currently projecting? And the answer to that question isn't found in your conscious desires or your vision boards or your affirmations. It's found in your nervous system. Your nervous system isn't receiving reality signals, it's broadcasting them. And the frequency it outputs, the actual electromagnetic, biochemical, energetic signature of your system in any given moment, becomes the hologram you experience as external reality. When your nervous system is in a state of contraction, fear, lack, unworthiness, that's the frequency being broadcast. And reality, being the faithful projection that it is, reflects that frequency back to you as circumstances that confirm your fear, validate your lack, prove your unworthiness. But here's the thing, you don't experience this as projection. You experience it as stuff that's happening to you. Bad luck, unfair circumstances, other people's choices, the state of the economy, the way the world works. Screen consciousness interprets the projection as external cause. And then you react to the projection, which generates more fear, more contraction, more lack, which changes the broadcast, which changes the projection, which you react to. Again, it's a closed loop, a self-reinforcing system. And most people live their entire lives inside this loop, never once recognizing that they're both the broadcaster and the interpreter. So, how do you break the loop? How do you shift from screen consciousness to projector consciousness in a way that's not just intellectual understanding, but actual, embodied, operational reality? You find the coherence point. There's a specific state, identifiable, accessible, trainable, where your nervous system becomes coherent, where the static clears, where your internal broadcast is no longer a chaotic mix of conflicting frequencies, but a single, clear, powerful signal. And when you hit that coherence point, reality has no choice but to reorganize around it, not because you're forcing anything, not because you're using willpower or techniques or effort, but because that's how projection works. Clean signal, clean image. You've experienced this state before, even if you didn't have language for it. It's the state where everything flows, where the right people appear at the right time, where obstacles dissolve before you even reach them, where you feel deeply, unshakably certain about something, and then it happens, almost effortlessly. That's not luck, that's not coincidence, that's coherent projection. And here's what makes this so powerful. The coherence point isn't reached through effort, it's reached through release, through letting go of the contraction, the resistance, the desperate grasping at outcomes, through dropping the entire exhausting performance of trying to control reality. Because here's the paradox. Screen consciousness requires constant effort, and it doesn't work. Projector consciousness requires no effort, and it works automatically. When you stop trying to change the screen and instead attend to your internal state, when you regulate your nervous system, clear your frequency, align your broadcast, reality bends. Not because you're special, not because you've unlocked some secret, but because that's the actual mechanism. That's how this works. So let's make this practical. Right now, think of a situation in your life that feels stuck. Something you've been trying to change, trying to fix, trying to make happen, and it's just not moving. Notice what happens in your body when you think about this situation. There's probably tension somewhere, tightness in your chest or throat or stomach, a subtle anxiety, a familiar frustration. That's the contraction, that's the signal you're broadcasting. And as long as that's the signal, that's what you'll continue to experience as external reality. Not because you're being punished, not because you don't deserve better, but because the projection matches the broadcast. Now, here's the shift. Instead of trying to change the situation, attend to the contraction, not to fix it, not to make it go away, just to be with it, to feel it fully, to let your nervous system know that it's safe to feel this without needing to act on it or change it or figure it out. This is counterintuitive, I know. Screen consciousness says you need to do something about the external problem. But projector consciousness understands that the external problem is the projection, and you can't solve a projection by manipulating the projection. You have to change the broadcast. So you stay with the sensation, you breathe, you let your system settle, and as you do, something starts to shift. The contraction begins to release, not because you're forcing it to, but because your nervous system, when given space and safety, naturally returns to coherence. And as coherence increases, your broadcast changes, subtly at first, then more noticeably, and without you doing anything to the external situation, without you making a phone call or sending an email or taking action, the situation begins to shift. Opportunities appear. People change their minds. Obstacles dissolve. The stuck thing starts moving. This will feel like magic the first few times it happens. But it's not magic, it's mechanics. You shifted from screen to projector. You changed the broadcast. Reality, being the faithful hologram it is, updated to match. Now here's what will try to pull you back. Because screen consciousness doesn't die easily, it's been your default for so long that it has momentum, and there are specific traps that will attempt to collapse you back into screen mode, especially when things start working. Resistance is the first trap. When reality begins to bend, your mind will immediately start questioning it. This can't be real. This is too good to be true. Something bad must be coming. And that questioning generates doubt, which is contraction, which changes your broadcast, which disrupts the projection. So you have to learn to let reality be easy, to let good things happen without immediately bracing for disaster, to recognize that ease isn't a fluke, it's the natural state when you're operating as the projector. Urgency is the second trap. When you want something desperately and it hasn't appeared yet, you start to panic. You start forcing. You start doing all the old screen consciousness behaviors, chasing, manipulating, efforting, and all of that generates a frequency of lack, which broadcasts lack, which projects, as you guessed it, continued absence of what you want. Projector consciousness holds desire lightly. It knows what it wants. It aligns the broadcast to match that reality. And then it allows the projection to update in whatever timing serves the highest coherence. The third trap is attachment to specific outcomes. Screen consciousness believes it knows exactly how things should unfold. But when you're the projector, you're working with infinite potential, and sometimes, often, reality organizes in ways that are far more elegant, surprising, and beneficial than what your limited mind could have imagined. So you set the frequency, not the form. You broadcast the essence of what you want, the feeling, the quality, the experience, and you let the hologram configure itself however it needs to in order to deliver that essence. And the fourth trap, this one's subtle but crucial, is external validation. Screen consciousness constantly looks outside itself for confirmation. Did it work? Is it happening? Can other people see it yet? And every time you do that, you're reinforcing the belief that reality is separate from you, which pulls you back into screen mode. Projector consciousness doesn't need external confirmation because it knows the broadcast determines the projection. It trusts the mechanism. It waits for reality to update, not from a place of doubt, but from a place of certainty. So how do you know when the shift has truly occurred? How do you know when you've moved from screen consciousness to projector consciousness in a way that's stable and sustainable? Synchronicities stop feeling like coincidences and start feeling like confirmations. You'll think of something and it appears. You'll need information and it arrives. You'll wonder about a person and they contact you. And instead of being shocked or amazed, you'll just know. You'll recognize it as the natural feedback of coherent projection. Your relationship to time changes. Screen consciousness experiences time as linear. Past causes, present causes, future. But projector consciousness understands that time is more fluid than that. The future you're broadcasting can reach back and rearrange the present. Decisions you haven't made yet can influence opportunities that appear now. Your emotional baseline shifts. Screen consciousness is reactive, constantly bouncing between high and low based on external circumstances. Projector consciousness is generative, sourcing its state from within and watching reality update to match. There's a deep settledness that comes from knowing you're the source. And perhaps most noticeably, effort decreases while results increase. Things that used to require massive struggle start happening with ease, not because you've gotten better at manipulating reality, but because you've stopped interfering with the natural projection process. But here's the critical piece. This isn't a technique you apply occasionally when you want something. This is a complete restructuring of your identity and relationship to existence itself. You are not a separate self in a world of separate objects trying to get what you need from an indifferent universe. You are the consciousness through which reality is constantly being generated. You are the projector, and everything you experience is the hologram of your internal state made manifest. This doesn't mean external reality doesn't exist. It means external reality isn't separate from you. It's not happening to you, it's happening as you. Your inner state and your outer circumstances are the same thing, experienced from different vantage points. And when you truly embody this, not just understand it intellectually, but live from it moment to moment, you stop being a victim of circumstances. You stop waiting for permission. You stop needing reality to change before you can feel how you want to feel, because you recognize that you feeling how you want to feel is what changes reality, not the other way around. So the invitation here isn't to try harder at manifesting, it's to stop trying altogether, to recognize that you're already projecting constantly, whether you're aware of it or not, and to start attending to what you're broadcasting rather than desperately trying to control what appears on the screen. Regulate your nervous system, clear your frequency, align your internal state with the reality you want to experience, and then, and this is the part that screen consciousness finds impossible to accept, let go, release the outcome, trust the projection. Because you're not the screen, waiting for reality to be kind to you. You're the projector, generating reality from the inside out. And the moment you fully recognize this, the moment you embody it, the moment you operate from it, reality has no choice but to bend. Not because you're forcing it to, but because bending to your coherent projection is what reality does. It's the only thing it's ever done. The question was never whether you have this power. You've always had it. You've been using it your whole life, unconsciously, creating by default. The question is whether you're ready to use it consciously, to take responsibility not just for your actions, but for your broadcast, to recognize that the quality of your inner world directly determines the nature of your outer experience. And if you're ready, if you're genuinely ready to stop being the screen and step into your role as the projector, then start now. Not with some elaborate technique or complicated process, just with this. Notice what you're broadcasting in this moment. Feel your nervous system state. Observe the quality of your inner frequency. And if it's contracted, fearful, lacking, don't judge it. Don't try to fix it. Just breathe, settle, let coherence return, and watch what happens next.